everyone, 3 more movies. Let's get started. Frances Ha stars Greta Gerwig, and she's a girl living in a city, and she's had a long-term roommate who, at the beginning of the film, decides to move out, and Frances doesn't quite know what to do with herself. She's been so invested in this friendship for so long that she doesn't know what she's like outside of this relationship. So the movie is her exploring her personality to find out who she is now. I think Frances Ha is a mirror into if you like mumblecore or not. We've talked about a couple mumblecore movies in this show. The Overnight was one, but I think Frances Ha sits more on a razor's edge in that it's more mumblecore-y, in that if you like the style of mumblecore, you will probably like this film. If you find mumblecore tedious and annoying, you're going to find this movie tedious and annoying. For those of you who don't know, the style of mumblecore is shown through very naturalistic dialogue, which is most of the time ad-libbed. It's sometimes overtly sexual, although this movie is not. But the style is usually non-famous actors using very naturalistic, very slow-paced dialogue. And that style can be off-putting for some people. And I tend to like mumblecore, but there are certain films in the style that stick out to me. I really enjoyed Baghead. I also enjoyed Hump Day. And the reason mumblecore is considered a style is because Baghead is a horror movie and Hump Day is a comedy, so it kind of transcends genre, so it's more of a style of film. But those movies stick out in a style that I tend to like. Frances Ha is not one of those movies. It's kind of in the pool with the rest of mumblecore. I did enjoy it, but it didn't stick out the way that some of the other films in the style do. Geostorm is the directorial debut of Dean Devlin. If you've been following director Roland Emmerich's career, the guy who did Independence Day in 2012, some other movies, you will know that Dean Devlin was his producer at one point in his career. But it took till 2017 for Dean Devlin to actually direct a film. Actually, that's not true because this movie was made several years prior. He's been working on the script for years, and this movie went through some production trouble, in that there were about $15 million worth of reshoots, and those reshoots were directed by someone else. That's not to say that reshoots automatically signal that a film is in trouble, but these were extensive plot redos. And by saying Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, you know what you're getting into here. It has the cast of thousands that Roland Emmerich is known for. It has some disaster, which Roland Emmerich is known for. It's basically Dean Devlin doing his best Roland Emmerich impersonation. It is goofy as hell. Gerard Butler plays a scientist who developed a series of satellites that could control the weather so that the weather wouldn't get out of control and kill everybody. And the satellites start malfunctioning, and the scenarios say that it's leading towards a geostorm, hence the title. There's also a countdown to Geostorm that is put on screens throughout the movie, which made me laugh a lot. It's just so ridiculous. And when you say the phrase, "there is no Geostorm" in the movie Geostorm, how am I supposed to feel? Remember when we talked about Fist Fight and I talked about how the premise of the movie is what we want to see? I didn't sign up to watch a movie called Geostorm so I could watch Gerard Butler stop a geostorm. I want to see the geostorm. This movie was bad. Real bad. The Hate U Give is based on the book of the same name. It's about a girl named Star who's played by Amandla Stenberg. Star is an African-American girl who lives in the rough part of the city. She goes to school at a private school with mostly white kids. And she finds her personality split between the two places. And she goes into detail about why she acts different at school than she does when she's at home. So she's already being pulled in 2 different directions. And she decides to go to a party with some of her city friends and meets up with a boy there that she grew up with. A fight breaks out at the party and he decides to try to get her home safely, where they are then pulled over by a police officer. Star was raised with the idea that when you are pulled over or talk to a police officer, that you do certain things so you do not escalate a situation. She's taught de-escalation. But her friend has not, and as much as she pleads for him to be cool, he provokes the officer into asking him to step out of the car. And during the confrontation with this white police officer, Star's friend is shot and killed, and she is the sole witness. So Star spends the entire movie navigating the politics of the two worlds she split in, plus having to be the sole witness of her friend's death at the hands of a white police officer. My Netflix list all of a sudden got very timely. So for the first 30 minutes or so of this film, I thought it was really great. They did some very subtle things that I really enjoyed. When Star is at her house in her neighborhood, everything is saturated normally. It looks like a normal movie. When her family drives her to school, they go through a very, very ritzy upper-class neighborhood. And those scenes are super oversaturated. So her skin, as a byproduct, looks darker. And then when she gets to her high school, the picture changes yet again, and it's very washed out. Everything's very blue. Everybody looks the same. And this was the filmmaker's attempt through color correction to inform the audience of how people view our main character, right or wrong. And I thought that was an interesting way to get the message across. But then as the film goes on, it's used not as a scalpel, but as a sledgehammer to get the point across. The three worlds don't stay individual. They start crossing, and when certain things happen in the private school world, the color correction changes to make her look different. And it's just kind of all over the place, and it doesn't quite work. And I thought Star's story worked really well on a macro level when she's dealing with the repercussions of the choices she has to make in the wake of this tragedy. When they're focusing on her story, her problems, the film is at its best. But the film slowly starts working with a bigger picture, and I don't think the film works as well when it's trying to make Star's story a catalyst for a larger movement story. I think there's nuance and interesting elements of Star's story where the bigger story just becomes broad strokes. And that was a little off-putting for me because they had a good thing going with just focusing on this family and how it's being affected. When it tends to get too big, it kind of lost its messaging. But a strong lead performance from Amanda Stenberg. Russell Hornsby is great in this movie. The performances universally are pretty good, but the emotional impact of the film gets lost when it starts using the broad strokes. And that's it. We're not going to do the ranking anymore. I think it's weird. It's just arbitrary and strange, and the movies don't really connect, and it's hard to compare. It's like comparing oranges to pineapples. It's strange. So that's over. We won't do that anymore. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.